someone in my family had died when I found out what the predator had did to my son.
To come out and be like, hey, this happened to me, that happened to me, it was horrible. But guess what? They called him a liar.
But he was only labeled a liar. Some of the abusers admitted their part in the entire ordeal.
It's not right for the church to yell at them and tell them how wrong they are, when in actuality, they have been victimized, they have been tormented and tortured, and are a product of that torture. This situation, and I'm gonna tell a story real quick. When I was younger, I was assaulted sexually. Many of us have those family friends and those acquaintances that we allow around our family members and around our loved ones, even around our children. And we tend to have this trust about them, but there is something deep inside of us sometimes that causes us to feel an insecurity about allowing them to be around our loved ones, especially our children, alone. And many times this results in very traumatic circumstances where family members come later and confess about how they were inappropriately touched or inappropriately dealt with. And it produces in that child or in that family member a way of confusion, a way of life that they are now confused about who they are. And many times people have grown up to accept this confusion as their true identity. But what has happened in the spirit realm is demons have used that trauma to make a foothold into that individual's life and cause them to accept the confused state of who they are beyond God's truth of who they are. And now it has widely been accepted as a culture. And so there are even people who are being taught that I may be born one way, but if I feel feminine or if I feel masculine, then I can just choose to be the opposite gender. But this example that we're going to watch is an example where that traumatic thing happens to an innocent child and it causes a lifestyle that is not conducive to God's will being done. Let's check out this video about Saucy Santana and let's explore the reasons why this cultural movement is demonic.
I thought Santana mama was
I'm his mother. Every house my son was allowed to visit was supposed to be a safe place.
Akbar.
My son was passed around to be used and abused by different family members. It felt like someone in my family had died when I found out what the predator had did to my son.
Now, first off, I want to start off by saying this is not me attacking him. This is not me attacking their family. This is not me attacking anything that anyone that may be associated with this situation or a situation like this may have gone through. But I just want to uncover the truth regarding this cultural accepting topic so that we can understand the origins of it and remove ourselves from it. And so, like she said at the beginning, she was saying about how it hurt her to find out that her son was being passed around by family members. So this was a multiple or a frequent thing that was happening. And so this traumatic event is conditioning this guy, Saucy Santana, to accept and become demoralized, confused, defeated in who he is, and accept another role that is submissive or is secondary to who God has called him to be, not even in the will of what God has called him to be. And I truly believe that all things work together for the good of them who love God and are called according to his purpose. The reason why I'm making this video is for this guy, if he hears it, or anybody who may be going through this situation. I'm not condemning you for your lifestyle. I'm not condemning you for what you're doing, because there is no condemnation until you're dead. If you have breath in your body, you can still accept Jesus. You can still learn what it is to be in truth. You can still learn God's truth about yourself. So it's not my place to put you in hell before you even get to judgment. But what I can say is that this guy has been victimized, and people like him have been victimized. It's not right for the church to yell at them and tell them how wrong they are, when in actuality they have been victimized, they have been tormented and tortured, and are a product of that torture, or they are a product of that defeat. And so what they need is help, not chastening. They need to be brought up from mud. It's like having somebody fall down in the mud and you get mad at them and you whoop them because they fail. It was a mistake. It was something that I didn't even cause myself. I didn't initiate this. It happened to me. And so a lot of things that is now culture started out as an innocent thing that someone did to them, that a demon used a willing vessel to traumatize an innocent one. And in traumatizing that innocent one, it caused that person to grow up in confusion, and from there they passed it on that this is okay. Their kids passed it on, and it became a culture. Okay, so I wanna get that understood. I want to get that, as some people say, overstood, right? Get an overstanding that this is not an attack against him. This is my cry to help him. This is my cry for Christians, people who really know God's heart, to pray for him, to pray for people like him, because they are products of what the enemy has took advantage of them in. They are not wanting this lifestyle. They're a product of the enemy's messed up formula. So if we can rewire or help them to relearn the truth that God has about them, then we can be effective in showing them the path that God has for them.
But no one wanted to talk about it. If more people talked about abuse, it could be helped. Even when predators are your family members.
Oh.
It took courage for my child to share his truth, but he was only labeled a liar. Some of the abusers admitted their part in the entire ordeal.
Did you hear that? She said it took him courage to come out and be like, hey, this happened to me. That happened to me. It was horrible. But guess what? They called him a liar. They said what you're saying is not true. Oh, get on. You're just a kid. You don't know what you're talking about. Cousin this wouldn't do that. Uncle this wouldn't do that. Auntie this wouldn't do that. And they label him as a liar, even more demoralizing who he is, even more demoralizing his character. And so you see these tactics with slaves. You see these tactics with people who are trying to oppress or dominate a certain people or nation or race. They beat them in the ground about who they are. They beat them in the ground about them telling what happened to them, right? They beat them in the ground. But then it results into that individual or that nation or that race becoming insecure and becoming less confident about who they truly are. And so now they begin to search outwardly, not look within. They begin to search outwardly for an example or for an answer. But the truth is in God, the truth of who you are. David said something so amazing in Psalms. He said, God, I am more wiser. I am more wiser than my teachers, and I have more understanding than my teachers, because I meditate on your testimony, God, about me. What you think about me, God, I meditate on that. And so David never had any misconception about who he was regarding God or who he was in line with God. He knew he was a son of God, a child of God. And because he knew that there were things that would happen, that he would stay in a place of calm and ease. It wouldn't rattle him because he knew, because he meditated on the thoughts that God had about him. And many of us develop our thoughts and the way who we are. We always trying to find out who we are, but we are trying to find it out by the means of this corrupted world, by the means of this world that is faulty and messed up, this world that is baked and cultured in sin. And so the way that we think we are, or the way that we have conducted ourselves, the way that we have taught ourselves of who we are, is through a perverted lens. But if you go to the originator, the God who created the heaven and the earth, the universe, and you ask him who I am, if you ask him who you are, then he will begin to let you know you're strong, you're courageous, you're a mighty man of valor. I've called you to do this. I've called you to win. I've called you to be more than an overcomer, to be the head and not the tail, right? And when we get that understanding, it doesn't matter what this messed up world throws at us. We can always go back to the truth of what God has made us and intended us to be, right? This world will try to tell a hammer that is a shovel. This world will try to tell a nail that is just a pen that you put up bulletins with. But then God comes and tells that nail, hey, you are a nail. You are made for stronger utility. You're made for different circumstances. Hey, you're a hammer. You're not a shovel. You're made to drive in those situations. You're made to push the envelope, right? So we need to learn God's testimony, his witness, what he sees we are. Okay, not just what we see we are, because it's in a perverted lens. Okay.
But the one predator blamed my son. Like a 9-year-old would want to be violated by an older cousin in that kind of way. I truly
I'm so sorry.
believe this situation opened the door to change my son's sexuality.
Did you hear that? I truly believe that this traumatic situation, not just the thing that happened, but also the lying on the person who is coming out to confess, lying on them, saying that they're saying this happened and that I did that. They lying, making them feel like maybe I am lying, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is supposed to happen. And so now it has messed the mind up. That's why, and I'm gonna get racial for a second, because I don't believe in being racial about, oh, this is what I don't believe in doing that, because I believe we're all one race, the body of Christ. I believe that we are all human race, right? And I believe that we are all made, although we may have differences in culture and language and all these type of things, we have the same tendencies in nature, right? But in the black community, we do need therapy. It's so many of us who need therapy, who need somebody to talk to convey our thoughts to ask us questions that we may have never even thought about, right? And I believe that will help. I believe that therapy is also a God-given thing to help the people, right? And so this situation, and I'm gonna tell a story real quick. When I was younger, I was around my family, right? And in my family, everybody was cool, everybody was close, but throughout the course of time, and this was when I was young, I was probably 7, 8. I was touched inappropriately. I was touched inappropriately by an older woman, right? An older family member. And I remember that night having a dream vividly. I can still see it to this day. I remember having a dream that a very seductive woman, at 8 years old, a very seductive woman walked into my room as a dream. She walked into my room and she came and did things with me in my dream at 8. And from that point, I remember looking at women in a very perverted manner, not looking at them for their mind or for their character or for the essence of who they are by their spirit, but looking at them for their bodies and what would please me at 8. And from that point going forward, I had always dealt with lust problems, perverting the way that women were supposed to be used and wanting them to be used for my purposes, which were fleshly, right? And so it really messed up my vision. It perverted how I saw women. And it wasn't until maybe a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that God freed me and delivered me from that lust, right? Even from that, it birthed me into pornography, masturbation, all these unnatural sexual things, sexually immoral things at a young age. And so I'm just telling this story to say that these things that happen to your kids and to these young people, and even those who may be older, the culture that is being accepted is from a demonic root. There may be people who just are being taught now that if you feel this way, if you feel feminine, then you can be a part of this community. If you feel like this, you can be a part of this community. Even if you want to be an animal, you can be a part of that community. And it is being taught because it was first introduced through sacrifice, through, inappropriately torturing and tormenting young kids and producing in them a confusion that makes them feel like, oh, this is what I'm for. This is what I was made for, to be abused, to be this way, to go the opposite way. But I want to let you guys know that the same thing that happened to him and the same thing that happened to me, God can free you from. The way that I was freed through this situation is I began, because of somebody who came and spoke into my life, they spoke life into me, right? That this is not right. This is not normal. It's not normal to watch these things every day or every other day. It's not normal to look at women in this way, in a very sexually demanding way, and vice versa. Women looking at men that way. It's not normal to look at the same sex that way. That's not a normal thing, right? Because if God gave us a command to be fruitful and multiply, I want y'all to think about this. If God gave us a command to be fruitful and multiply, how can the same sex obey God? How can a person of the same sex obey God? It's not possible, right? And even if you say, oh, we're going to go to adopt, or we're going to go to do the seed farming or whatever, that still has to be produced by an opposite sex's seed. And that adopted child has to be accepted because of what the two opposite sexes had done. So this thing that is taking over the world and is being pushed, this agenda, it is not of God. It is demonic, and it is victimizing. It is not I'm not blaming you, but I'm telling you, you need to look and see what it is, because only God can help you. Because it has a demonic root, it needs a godly fix. If you go and, put a hammer in the wall, you don't need God to go get the opposite side of the hammer and pull it out. But if there is a demonic reason why something is happening, you can't use natural means to fix it. And so what happened was somebody came and spoke into my life, and it kind of encouraged me to spend time with God. When they spoke into my life, I wasn't necessarily delivered at that moment. But what happened was I began to spend time with God. And the more I spent time with him, the more I was intrigued about his heart and who he is and who he's calling me to be. And I remember for 3 whole months, I didn't do anything in any more pornography, any more masturbation, none of it. And a matter of fact, I remember after those 3 months, I remember saying to myself, man, I forgot that I had this addiction before. I forgot that I had this lustful desire before, because I was so focused on God. And so the way that you are delivered from this thing, the way that you are freed from this situation, is by focusing on Jesus. That's the only way. And matter of fact, any sin that you may be dealing with, whether it's lying, whether it's murder, whether it's any other sin, guys, any other sin, the only way to be free is through what Jesus already did. And so if Jesus already did it, all you need to do is go spend time with him, and he will tell you about what he thinks about you. And it will encourage you and push you and motivate you to walk in the truth, because the Bible says that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So we must spread the good news, not bad news that, oh, you need to stop, you need to do. No. Although that is true that they need to stop, the way that they're going to stop is not going to be because you're telling them they need to stop, because they didn't choose it. It was brought upon them. Most of them, it was brought upon them. And a lot of them that are choosing it, they're still being victimized in their mind. Their minds are blind to the truth, right? But I pray right now that every evil spirit that may have been influenced or introduced to you that are watching, and those of you that may hear about this video and turn it on, I pray that every spirit that may have been introduced to you involuntarily, or even if you chose this life but you kind of know that this ain't right, and even if you don't know, I pray that that evil spirit uproot itself in the name of Jesus, and that you walk in the truth of who God has called you to be. He's called you to be what you were born as. He called you to be strong, independent, a loving, nurturing individual that walks in his truth and walks in his demand for your life. So I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and walk in the purpose that God has for you.